Unsolicited advice.
What you whispering for? Yo, what's unsolicited advice? Take it or leave it. So, to be honest, we're all toxic. You know, we all have some type of trait where it comes out as toxic to some people, whether it's in a good way or a bad way. You know, like being intoxicating. But I want to break it down. So I'm going to talk about, in this one I'm going to talk about, let's just say like the top 10 toxic males. Of course, in the next video I'm going to do women. But I wanted to do this because I was talking to somebody the other day, I think yesterday or the day before, and we were just having a conversation. It was, of course, someone of the opposite gender. You know, we had like a debate about what makes each other toxic, you know, and how it affects other people and stuff. And I thought it was so interesting because sometimes you do things and you don't know, or sometimes you use it to your advantage. And, you know, sometimes it's just things that were inherited as you grew up and you can't shake it. But on the topic of toxic men, we'll go down. I had to figure out like 10 different traits. So we'll talk about each one of them. And one of the first ones is what you would call a love bomber. So they overwhelm you with gifts, with a lot of attention, promises. You know, it seems perfect at first, but, you know, they use intensity to control and later withdraw affection as punishment. You know, like I said, it's just like they just are so passionate at first, and then their way of controlling the situation is withdrawing affection. If you do something they don't like, or if you don't do what they ask, or things like that. There's a lot of guys like that. You know, it starts off so great, and some girls like it. They like to what they say, they like for you to love all over them and, you know, give them attention and stuff. But you have to be careful about that. That's why I say, you know, with women, they have to be careful about constantly wanting attention, constantly wanting reassurance and affection, because it can be used as a weapon. You know, because men are going to take that as you're insecure, you know, and you don't have, a lot of self-esteem or confidence in yourself. So they'll love bomb you early because they look at that as a weakness, and you can use it as a weapon. You know, you can use that love bombing as a weapon to say, oh, I'm going to buy this girl all kind of stuff because she ain't used to it. I'm fixing to give her all kind of attention because you say nobody pays her attention. I'm going to, make all these promises because every time I make a promise, she lights up. You know, she loves it. And they use it as control. And then, you know, once you start realizing it, you know, they'll start easing up on the love, you know, and they use it as a punishment. Say, okay, you know, you don't want to do what I ask you to do, then I'm going to withdraw my love, and I'm going to withdraw my affection. So, yeah, you know, like I said, that's one toxic trait, is being a love bomber. The next one we'll talk about is the emotionally unavailable guy. You know, he's emotionally unavailable. So, you know, he keeps you guessing about how he feels. He never really talks a whole lot. Every time you try to have a conversation about stuff, he really can't carry a conversation. You know, he probably gets frustrated. You know, and in this way, he's trying to avoid his vulnerability. And I don't think he means to do it. It's just a guy trait. Like, we don't want to feel vulnerable because we're so used to everyone telling us to be a man, to suck it up, to deal with it. And, you know, hey, you know, that woman needs you to be a rock. She needs you to be stoic. You know, she needs you to handle business. You can't be sitting here moping and being vulnerable, you know, like a little girl, or as we say, like a little bitch. So, you know, they avoid being vulnerable. They avoid connection, you know, while stringing you along, because they feel like you'll figure it out after a while. It's like, why do I have to talk about it? You'll figure it out. You know, you'll figure it out in my actions, how I feel about stuff. You know, why do I have to talk about it? You know, I'll just string you along because you'll get it. You'll get it after a while. But that's pretty much what they do. You know, let's keep it a buck. You know, but like I said, we're not here to bash. We're here to understand. So I'm trying to get you to understand why they do it. And like I said, that's something that's just embedded in a man because we're so used to being tough. We're so used to having to suck things up and you know, get it done. No excuses. What are you complaining about? Why do you have it? You know, why is there excuses? You know, so when you start asking us things, it's like, I don't know. I just do. I don't have any feelings towards it. I just do because I've always been told to do and get it done. And nobody ever asked me, you know, what my feelings are about things because I'm a man. So when you do ask a man that, you have to kind of, for some, you do have to give them time to open up. And you never know. It's just going to be a certain moment where they feel comfortable opening up. But yeah, emotionally unavailable guy. The next one is a favorite nowadays with the way that the social culture is going right now, and it's the narcissist. Now, most of y'all can't spell narcissist, but you love using the word when trying to describe a man, or most men nowadays. So a narcissist is a guy that's obsessed with his image, and he's obsessed with his ego. They say he lacks empathy. He manipulates others to serve his needs and blames everyone but himself. So yeah, there's plenty of guys out there that's like that. I think most of the time a narcissist is built. You know, it's kind of like that's something that you build. It ain't somebody that's just born like that. I think that's something that you build over time. Most guys that are narcissists, they don't start off like that. But a guy that's a narcissist, that means he's seen it work before. That means everything he had been doing wasn't working. And he started noticing certain guys, when they do it, it works. You know, for some reason, these women, you know, gravitate to these assholes. So it's like, something's working. What I'm doing ain't working. I'm finna do that because whether you like it or not, it works. And I think women, it's like, oh, well, you know, don't be like that. But I would always tell women, if you don't want a guy to be like that, stop promoting it. Because you have a lot of girls that gravitate to that. They'll complain all day, but they love it. Oh, I love it. He's so confident. You know, he takes care of himself. You know, he might have an ego, but I love the confidence. You know, oh, he doesn't manipulate me. That's my king. I want to do it for him. It's like, you know, but the main thing about a narcissist is he will blame everyone but himself. The hardest thing for a narcissist is to say, man, you know, I messed up. That's my fault. That was on me. So that's why a lot of women love using that word, because it's a quick and easy way to describe certain guys that they have been with that didn't work out. You know, he was a narcissist. You know, he thought he was prettier than me. You know, he just had an ego, and he just didn't listen to me, and he did what he wanted to do, and it wasn't my fault. You know, it was his. You know, but he will blame everybody else but himself. So you have a narcissist. That's another one. But that one's such a layered one. You can't just call every man a narcissist, because a lot of women will say it just because he doesn't agree with her, or he doesn't do what she wants him to do. He may be his own person, and you're trying to mold him into something that he's not, and you'll call him a narcissist because he's not doing what you want him to do, or he's not moving how you want him to move. Okay, so the next one that came to my mind is what you would call the player. You know, so a lot of y'all deal with this type of guy because usually he's aesthetically pleasing. You know, he's charming, he's smooth, you know, but he always keeps his options open. You know, he lies or omits, you know, the truth to keep women competing for him. For some guys, it's just a strategy. And the reason why you have guys that do stuff like this is because whether men or women want to agree with this, it's a competition. Women kind of do the same thing. Women can be charming. Women can be smooth. Women always keep their options open. Women don't all, women will lie, and then some of them will omit the truth, to keep you competing for them, because they want to accentuate the positives. And they don't want to give you the negative just yet, because they want to see if you're worthy of it, or if you will accept the negative side of them. So it's the same thing, but of course when guys do it, it comes off as being a player. It's like, oh, you just want to talk to everybody. Oh, you look like you got hoes. Oh, you just say all the right things, don't you? And people tend to forget we're supposed to do that. That's the whole point of dating. Sometimes people don't realize how hard it is to get another person's attention and keep their attention when you're trying to date or you're trying to get to know someone. Most girls are going to curb you or dish you, or not give you the time of day. So you have to be charming. You have to be smooth. And that's why you have to keep your options open, because women already have options. All those guys that they put in their back pocket or they ignore, they can go right back around and talk to them anytime they want, when they get bored. But of course, when the guy does it, it comes off as egotistical, because it's like, why can't you keep one woman? Why can't you just focus on one woman? It doesn't really, you have to keep your options open until you find the right person. That's the whole point of dating. You have to, you have to go on dates. You have to find out who's right for you. You don't go in the store and just immediately pick up something because you like it. You have to find the right fit, the right size, what is good on you. But this is, it's such an unpopular opinion. It's one that I don't like too much, because I think people just use it because they want you to only want them. And sometimes people realize that's the whole point of dating. It ain't just you, it is a competition. And you have to be, there's a winner and there's losers, and you just have to be chose. It's all about getting chose. People have options. You may not like it, but it's just the truth. People have options. There ain't nothing else you can say or do about it. The next one is another popular phrase that people like to use nowadays, especially when you're dealing with men, and it's the gaslighter. They twist facts and reality to make you doubt yourself. They use confusion and denial to gain control in arguments. So gaslighting, yes, people do that. We also need to stop watching movies, because sometimes gaslighting is also just somebody just stating facts to you and you don't like it. So you get offended and it makes you doubt yourself, because most of y'all, especially when it comes to a woman dating a guy, most women feel like they can win arguments. And a lot of them don't like dating a guy that they can't win an argument with. Trust me, just like sit and watch it. Like sit and watch it. Like watch a man and a woman get into a debate or argument. If the guy looks like he's winning, no. Most of the time, most women do not like that, because now all of a sudden, oh, you sassy. Oh, you just, you're a narcissist. Like all that stuff starts coming up. They start calling you certain labels because you're winning an argument. You're stating facts, and most people don't like it. But gaslighting is true. Most people use this to manipulate. It is true. It does happen. But what I'm trying to get people to understand is you can't use it for every little thing. You'll know when you're being gaslighted. Like if you know this guy got another woman pregnant, it's a fact. But he's twisting the facts of it, and he's twisting the reality of it to make you doubt yourself, where he says, oh, well, it came from a night where you was just being mean to me, and you acted like you didn't want me no more, and I was vulnerable, and I just, I met this person, and it just happened. That's gaslighting, because he's making you doubt yourself, saying that you pushed him into that woman's arms. That's gaslighting. But if a guy is stating facts and he's just so happened to win in an argument, that doesn't mean he's gaslighting you. That doesn't mean he's trying to confuse you, to gain control. sometimes it just is what it is. Sometimes you may be wrong. But of course, gaslighting is just a word that can describe a certain man that is toxic. And there are men that are gaslighting. There are situations where you are being gaslighted. To piggyback off that, we're going to also talk about another toxic male trait, and that's the victim. Always has a sad story about why he's broken. Uses trauma or hardship as a way to gain sympathy while avoiding accountability or growth. Now, one of the main reasons why some guys play victim because they are abusers, like physical abusers. The guys that will put their hands on you will immediately start crying and saying, I grew up this way and I saw my father do it, and that was the only reason why my mom stayed around. Or, you just don't know how much I love you, and it just hurts me to see another person with you. This, that's victim. That's playing victim because they're trying to justify what they just did to you. Whether it is verbal abuse or physical abuse or mental abuse, it's a way to gain sympathy while avoiding what they did to you. So yes, there are a lot of broken men out there. And there are men that will share stories with you once they're vulnerable. They will share stories with you. Now, there's a difference between someone sharing something with you, so, to get you to understand or know them better. It's another thing for somebody to do you a certain way, for an incident to happen, and then they bring it back up as to why that incident happened. Oh, it's because this happened to me in my life, so that's why I did it to you. Because this happened to me, and I didn't mean to, but you knew that this is how I grew up, or this is what happened to me, so I can't control it. No, that's playing victim. Of course, we can say women do the same thing, but that's another video. We're not gonna harp on that, but that's one right there. So, and that's usually a pretty popular one. The next one we'll talk about is the control freak. Now, the control freak, that is a very magical one, because it just depends on the person. Some people like for you to control them. They like for people to take charge. So it just depends on the situation. But the control freak, of course, wants to dictate how you dress, where you go, who you talk to. They mask it as protection or love, but it's rooted in insecurity and dominance. This means this person's been cheated on before. This means this person is probably guilty of doing something themselves, or in the middle of doing something, and they're afraid that you know about it and you're trying to get your get back. So of course they mask it as protection to make it seem like they want you for themselves. And some girls get caught up in it because it's like, oh yeah, I like it. Some girls like it. They like a jealous man. No. Don't. Always display confidence at all times. You should always display confidence. You should always reassure yourself. Don't look for reassurance in other people. You have to have confidence. You have to love yourself and have confidence in yourself. You can't sit there and say, oh, well, I like a jealous man. I want a guy to be, to be a control freak. No, you don't. And the biggest way for a guy to do this is what's going on nowadays, where all these women want you to pay all the bills. They want you to take care of them. What type of, how much money you got. What are you going to pay for? What do you think a guy's going to do? What do you think is reciprocated after that? That means, oh, you don't want to listen to me? Well, I'm going to take all that back. I paid for this. I paid for that. I paid for this house. I paid for the rent. I paid for the car. If I tell you you can't go nowhere, you can't go nowhere. If I can't tell you can't talk to that person, you can't talk to that person. If I tell you how to dress, then you better dress that way. Perfect example is the whole Puff Daddy or Diddy trial. That's a perfect example of control freak. He was showering her with whatever she wanted. And in turn, she had to do all this freaky, nasty shit. Now, I'm not saying she wasn't into some of it, but if you look at, if you listen to some of it, you knew that there was a price to pay for the lifestyle that she wanted to live. And some of y'all girls nowadays need to realize that it's not worth it. It's not worth going through all that just to get your nail and hair done constantly without having to pay for it, or just to get wined and dined for a nice meal or whatever like that, you know, or somebody paying your bills. I get it. Don't nobody want to pay bills. You know, I would love for somebody to come in and pay my bills. That'd be great. But I'm smart enough to know that if that person's paying my bills, they're going to feel as if they have the right to tell me what to do and tell me how to live my life. And I would rather suffer in silence, you know, suffer in, you know, solitude than to have somebody can dictate my life because they're paying for it. So yeah, you don't want a control freak. Oh man, this is a fan favorite. This is a fan favorite. So another type of guy is your hot and cold guy. You know, they're very intense one minute and then they disappear the next. So everything's flowing good, you know, and I'm guilty of that, because if I start feeling a certain thing, I'm out. I'll start saying, something's not right, I'm gone, I'm out. No explanation. I've done it plenty of times. I'm guilty of it. So it creates emotional addiction by keeping you off balance. And it's also a trick that is taught to most men, because this is what keeps a woman more interested in you. Because think about it. You look like a sucker or a simp if you're constantly giving a woman your attention. If you're at their beck and call, if you're giving them everything that they need. For most women, it's boring. Most women like to chase. They want to chase. They want to constantly feel curious about you. You know, it's damn near intoxicating to them. So some guys are taught to do this. It's not that we want to, because if we like you, we own you. But real game, if we talking about real game or real, you know, if we keeping it player, this is kind of what you have to do, you know, in a way, because I'm not saying it's right, but in a certain way, you kind of have to do it, because you have to keep a woman off balance, because she's not really going to be interested in you if she has too much access to you. You know, it's not fun no more. For some people, it's the love of the chase. For some, it's intoxicating to chase, or to get to know you, to peel back more layers. So if you're just giving them everything all at once, if you just throw the book in front of them and say, here, this is who I am, what's the fun in that? You know? They want a monthly trial where every month there's something new, you know, and exciting. Just being honest. One of my least favorite ones, though, that we're going to talk about next, and I can't stand it because I try not to just, you know, subscribe to it. You're probably not going to see me do it. And it's got me in trouble because some people think that I'm being nonchalant, but it's just something I refuse to do, because that's a dangerous road to go down. And that's the jealous, possessive guy. Constantly accuses you of cheating or disloyalty. You know, uses jealousy as a weapon to isolate you. Most guys that are like this are guilty. Now, I've cheated. I've cheated plenty of times, you know. But the one thing about me is I'll look at you and we'll talk about it. You know, I'm not going to run from it. We'll talk about it, or I'll say, yeah, I did this or I did that. I'm not going to sit there and hide it. So I'm not the type that's going to be all, the type that accuses you of cheating because I feel guilty. You know, so most jealous guys are going to do that. They're going to accuse you of cheating and being disloyal because they don't know how to keep a woman. I mean, it's just real simple. They don't know how to keep a woman, so they're going to accuse you of being disloyal. They're going to accuse you of cheating because and some of them are just lazy. You know, and it usually starts happening when they know they don't have any control over you anymore. You have your own mind, and you're just not caught up in, you're not on cloud nine no more. You're more focused, and you're more conscious of everything that's going on. So when you start driving and making the rules and you start dictating things, that's when they start getting jealous, because it's like, oh, this is not fun no more. She's not feeling me like when she first was with me. You know, oh God, I don't know about this. She don't listen to me. That's when he starts thinking that you're cheating or you're being disloyal because he has no type of mental control over you. You know, that honeymoon phase is over. And to wrap this up, try not to be long-winded because there's so many different types, but I tried to break it down to 10 different ones. The last one is the ego. No, the ego-driven alpha. I think I said that right. Yeah, ego-driven alpha. So this is your misogynistic, just caveman type man. Kind of Donald Trump like man. Just says stuff, does whatever they want without consequence. Obsessed with dominance. Status and power. Views relationships as trophy. So he treats you like a trophy woman to him. Where you're just supposed to be arm candy. You're not supposed to talk or do anything. You're just there to look pretty. So they treat relationships like trophies or competitions. They don't treat it like partnerships. This is the worst guy that you can be with because you'll never feel love. You will only feel like his secretary or his assistant or, just like a maid or a nanny or something. Like, you're just there to serve. You're not there to be his partner in life. You're not there to be his love. You're not there to be anything but a trophy. You're just there to stand there and look pretty and not talk. And that's, for some girls, they're cool with that. But those type of girls aren't to be taken serious anyways because they're living a whole different type of life. That's a whole different type of lifestyle that they're looking forward to. But you do have your ego-driven alphas that are probably the worst of the worst. You don't want to deal with those type of people at all. But yeah, those are my 10. You can go down to each one of them, that I talked about. I'm sure if you haven't met every type of guy on that list, you're going to. But the whole idea of this is to understand why they do what they do, because there is some sadness in there. There is some things in there where the person had been through stuff and now they're using it as a weapon. I'm not saying any of it's right or wrong. It's just best to understand why people do what they do, why they tick. What made them do this? Is it because of me? Is it because of something in the past? Is it a weapon to, or a shield to protect themselves? Because sometimes we forget how vulnerable men can be because they're only told to be men, and to suck it up and stop crying and figure it out. Women are allowed to be vulnerable. Women are allowed to express their feelings or to search for those answers. Where guys have to figure it out in silence and solitude, because you can't show weakness. And I'm not saying it's right. It's just, it is what it is. But as always, it's just unsolicited advice. You can take it or leave it.